Welcome to the Penguin Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Erik Tait. Joining me as always, Nick Locapo. Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Hey. Oh, I just ran and now I'm destroyed at this point. So you got me at a good spot.
Oh, perfect. we got Nick here with all of his inhibitions down. We can get all the information.
They gave me an extra coffee, and then I got one. We're good.
Nick, after the show last week, I got some messages from listeners about our shows, and they kind of want to know what we do and how we put them together, and then to sort of dovetail into that, after you and I are done talking, I'll kick it over to someone who has put a lot of work into a show recently, which is Matt Franco.
Oh, Matt's on? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Can we just fast forward to Matt? That sounds more exciting.
No, I think that you and I have basically spent the better part of 3 to 4 years now, putting together full on theater shows, which is wild to think about because neither of us had that when we met.
Yeah. I guess this is cool. We have plenty of time to talk about it because I don't really, I've just kind of blown with the wind this whole time. Nowadays, yes, that's what I'm most excited about is designing a theater show. But I think if you really boil it down to what I'm working on and what probably both of us are is what venue are you working?
Yeah.
I've only ever written material or chosen tricks or whatever for the venue, whether I knew it or not at the time, but for the venues that I was working. For example, I really didn't even get into stand-up magic until the early part of the 2010s. And the only places that I really had accessible to me were open mic nights and things. And look, you can't go to an open mic night and do a 10-minute long mentalism piece. It's just,
it's not possible.
Of course you can.
You'll just never be allowed back.
No. So whether I knew it or not at the time, the venue was really dictating what I was learning to do. So back then, the tricks that I really got into were the balloon swallow, because that would shut the room up and get everybody's attention, or Bill and Lemon, because it just there's a lot of reasons why the Doc Easton, Bill and Lemon, Steve Spill, Bill and Lemon type of thing really works well to hold a crowd's attention. But it was really all about finding tricks that could grab people's attention that didn't really want to give me their attention. Did you find similar things or?
I was a close-up guy for a long time, and I didn't really start doing parlor stuff until the late 2010s, but I was in a different situation because I was hosting a lot of burlesque. And so I had a full-on stand-up comedy act that I could just go and tell jokes. But when I was in these burlesque rooms, no one's there to see a magic trick or listen to a joke. They've got a different agenda. And so I had to really work on material that would grab people by the throat and keep them interested, which is sort of where Nick the Duck came from, sort of where my book test came from, and then definitely where some of the card stuff that I do that's a little more aggressive. But I didn't really start refining it until I got to work the Mystiques of the world.
Yeah, and that's, those venues didn't exist.
No.
The great American magic venues of the big uprising of those venues of 2015. So we're talking about Mystique Dining, Chicago Magic Lounge, House of Cards, Magic Castle, obviously has always been there. Smoke and Mirrors.
Magic Castle was the only game in town for a long time. There were a couple of theaters that you could go to, but they were really few and far between. The Comedy Magic Club in Hermosa Beach was one, but
and that's really a stand-up comedy room.
Yeah,
for the most part, right?
There's a couple of places in Lake Tahoe, maybe, but because Vegas was the only other place, and you had to four-wall a place. Yeah. That wasn't an option.
Yeah, because that's what ended up happening to my material. Even if I wanted to do a bigger room, I would end up at the Improv or something. And those aren't magic rooms. I mean, they're so wide.
Yeah.
You know, you're still limited to what the room allows you to do.
Hmm.
So anyway, when those venues opened up, and then it's like, wow, I can do an hour of
Yeah.
material for a week. How? Really? Like,
Which was
okay, well,
so
that's like,
scary the first time I had to do
because
it.
yeah, it's terrifying. But it's also the only other place that you could do an hour outside of that before was like if you did like a corporate Christmas party or something.
Hmm.
And again, the venue dictates your material. You can only do commercial. You got to play it right down the middle of the road
Yeah.
on shows like that, you know? So, I mean, yeah, you have a little bit more creative freedom with those shows, but not until I got into like Mystique dining
Hmm.
where I was able to just like pick my tricks and try this and try that and then like go to bed and wake up and be like, all right, let me try this other thing and
Hmm.
the next night. And that's where you start to craft it. But yeah, it's always been about the venue.
I think what really started to change it for me was when I started thinking about where I wanted the show to go and then working backwards. Because it wasn't until I started playing with like, what is the big effect at the end and how do I get there? Which is something I picked up from you actually with some of the math stuff that you're doing. But I was like, oh, that's a really
Yeah.
great idea. But how do I put that in my own spin?
I saw Carl Hein once, really like he just slapped me upside the head. Actually, it was at Wizards Theater of Magic way back in the day.
Yeah.
Um, he had just this really surprise ending to a multiple selection routine that I had just not seen coming,
Yeah.
and like that really inspired the. I just need to have that type of feeling at the end of my show. Like,
Hmm.
there's no reason I can't do something in that world. So, yeah, I remember kind of dreaming that up at one point, and that's just kind of always been the backbone of almost any show I do at this point.
Hmm.
And I guess to complete the evolution of the venues, own venue here, P3. You know, I when we would host all these lectures and things,
Hmm.
really either my role or your role was to kind of just fill the gaps. So
Yeah.
like, not, and we both have experience hosting, so that's not really a big deal. But all of a sudden, like you got COVID and all these things, and now like the venue just needs shows
Yeah.
in it, right? So, and of course, we both have shows at this point, but now because that venue has lights and sound and all the tech and all those things, you can actually craft a experienced as opposed to a thing. So once again, I mean, here I am with like a show now that is like I'm trying to convince people that time is a flat circle and
Yeah.
and that they've been to the show before. Um,
I
and that's
s-
all because I've been, you know, I wish I started from that point
yeah.
and then did this whole thing in reverse. But the truth is, I would have had never had the space to do it in.
Hmm.
If I didn't know anything about booking a theater 20 years ago, or 15, 10 years ago. So,
The
but yeah, now it's just we're able to do that. And technology has also allowed us to do that as well. You can run your own one man show.
Yeah, the thing that kind of worries me about our theater is how spoiled I'm going to get in there. Because I can just go in the middle of the night and like play with the lights and the sound and the video system, and
See, I'm okay with it.
it's it's getting to the point that if you see my show at P3, it's just any seeing it anywhere outside of P3 is like a pale comparison. You know what I mean?
Yeah, people come up to you and go, "Oh, that was incredible," and then
Yeah.
you go, "Oh no, no." I mean, you should come to Columbus and see
Yeah.
that. Like, it could be the best show you ever did, and you would hate it, you
Yeah.
know, because it's
Not that
just
I
that's
don't
how it is.
not that I don't love working some of these venues. I mean, like, I'm in Mystique all the time these days, and like talk about the venue dictating the show, because there are pieces that I have come up with that really only work in Mystique, because you're in
Yeah.
this, like, I know we've talked about Mystique on the show before, but like it's this long table that is like people are seated in these giant thrones, so you can't really get
Hmm.
them up, but at the same time they've got this big space in front of them,
Yeah,
so they can like
it's so unique.
roll dice or like write on stuff or hide things under plates. And it's just, I don't know. I was out there not too long ago. It was in San Diego, and I was working La Jolla. Kristen Lambert was working San Diego, and we just got together on a day that we both had off, and we're just like talking through all of the little things that we do in our show. And like I had figured out weird little sound things that she didn't know about, and she'd figured out weird little like nooks and crannies and peaks that I didn't know about. And it's wild when you start to compare notes on specific venues
Yeah.
with other performers who work them all the time.
Yeah. And so I guess to answer the question, right, is
Mm-hmm.
like uh, I've really only worked on my show based on where I am or
Yeah.
where I want to be working,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that can be hard because if you don't have the space to work on where you want to be working, it can be a little bit difficult. But at least you have that in mind, right? Like
Yeah.
the tricks that you're choosing for your show right now might not be the ones that you want to be doing in the place you want to be working. But the good news is you have options now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really didn't know where the hell I'd be performing magic tricks in 2010, 10 years later, right?
Yeah.
Like, how could I know that? Yeah, it's not possible.
There's so many places now that'll like take a chance on young people because they've got the room to work. Like, Chicago Magic Lounge is like a great example of a place that is taking all kinds of risks on having performers like at the tables and then maybe putting them into a feature slot or something like that because they know they've got a 45-minute headliner that can
Well,
really crush the place out.
and I mean, they need people,
Yeah.
right? We need good magicians,
Mm-hmm.
and again, the venue is just each venue has its own rules. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you're at the Chicago Magic Lounge, it's not your show if you're doing the tables. You're there to represent the Chicago Magic Lounge
Yeah.
and do strong magic and entertain the guests that are there. So so like not until you do your own theater show is it
Mm-hmm.
your own rules. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's always been my advice, at least
Mm-hmm.
for now. I'm sure my opinion will change 10 years from now, but the best way to go about choosing, was that the question?
Yeah.
Choosing material, putting together a show.
I don't know. I think that like I just got these like questions like flooded in via Instagram of just like Eric and Nick talk about your shows. We want to hear more about you. Like they hear about us going on
Well,
the road and they don't get to like come see it. And so I don't know where this is going. This is a new podcast format for
well,
us.
so yeah, so like I guess another thing that I do that, and
Mm-hmm.
this just lined up lucky for me. I've probably talked about it before, like
Mm-hmm.
somewhere on this podcast or who knows, but in I did my first like stand-up show around 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got lucky that I was trying to like maybe I should write it down, right? So
Yeah.
like, maybe I should write it down. And I discovered a program called Evernote, which is still it's a note-taking software. Everybody, I'm sure you got something that you use to
Oh,
take notes.
I am also an
Everybody does.
Evernote addict. It's
Yeah.
the way I work now.
Well, I got lucky because I was smart enough to that first show be like, hey, I'll start a notebook. I'll date it the show, and then in that notebook, I'll have all the notes, and each note will be the different tricks that I did, and then I'll put my script for each trick in there. So every time I do a show, I make a new notebook, and then each trick gets its own card, and the script that I said is in there. So I can go back to any show I ever did, look at not only what tricks I did, but then what I said.
Wow.
And not it's not like word for word a lot of times, but
Mm-hmm.
like a lot, the introductions always change. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm at Bonkers Comedy Club in Orlando, Florida, like that intro, like, hey, it's great to be, that's all gonna be different.
Yeah.
And then also at the end of it, I can keep notes like how it went or how I felt before going into it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty well detailed out. And it's so easy to grab the script from the last show and just dump it into the next show and
Mm-hmm.
then make alterations to it. So you're never forgetting what you said before and you're always evolving the script going forward. I was smart enough to do it, but at the same time, I felt lucky that I've had it my entire performing career. I can go
Mm-hmm.
back and look at everything, which is pretty amazing. And the tricks stay pretty much the same, but they've just evolved a whole hell of a lot
How
over 10 years.
how often do you think you update the script for your stuff? Like when you put I'm curious about your writing process. I know we're both very scripted, and I think that a lot of people don't realize how scripted both of us are. But I'm curious as to how you develop your script and change it.
There's a couple like so I change it every show.
Mm-hmm.
Every show I'm trying to cut fat every show I do.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, like I would be if I look back, I would be missing out if I wasn't just as dumb as I was.
Mhm.
Because in the moment, like I have scripts that are just like buried in my head at this point. So if I have to like ad lib or talk on the fly about any trick, or like I missed the card and I don't know where the card is and I
Mhm.
need to like cover my ass for 2 minutes to figure it out, like I'm able to just recall some
Yeah.
old script that's in my head, that allow me to get there. And so like if my script was perfect tomorrow, I wouldn't have those experiences, right? Like you
Mhm.
have to have the bad script and then the bad script and then the kind of bad script and the kind of bad script and the kind of getting better script and the kind of like, it just, to be good, I can't have the great script until I've had 700 bad scripts, right?
Yeah.
And I still don't have the great scripts. But um, the tricks evolve as well. So like the
Mhm.
tricks surrounding the tricks that I have in my show change. So that might alter my scripts a little bit based on
Mhm.
the transition between trick 1 and 2 or trick 3 and 4. So the in-betweens change. So I'm nowadays, the process that I'm using is before the show, I make my notebook, I put my
Mhm.
scripts in there, and I kind of really, I'm really trying to come away from each show with learning about a few things in my set. Like,
Mhm.
okay, this trick I really want to nail down, or I want to nail the script at the end of this
Yeah.
part here, right? If I hit this, I'm happy with this show. And instead of after the show, like dumping my thoughts back into my notebook and telling myself how I did, I'll now take audio notes. So
Mm.
immediately after the show, when I have like a few moments, I'll just talk to myself on my phone,
Oh, that's really
um,
good.
and and kind of just debrief. Like I'll go trick by trick and say, all right,
Yeah.
yeah, and the floating card tonight, yeah, you were an idiot. You should have practiced once before you went out because you messed up the spin. But we
Mhm.
know that. So here, let's talk about the rope trick. Okay, the rope trick, yeah, no, it's fault.
Yeah.
So actually, we should get rid of the rope trick. Okay, what about the card trick? Like, and just like be a insane person and talking to themselves for a few minutes, and then I'll listen to that
Yeah.
before my next show,
I
right?
really like the idea of the audio notes because I've been trying to take more notes recently. One of the things that I've been so focused on is quality of life in my show, because there's like all these
Mm.
little things that like that I like I go in the moment when I'm like working on the show, especially like if I'm in a venue, I kind of go, oh man, if only I could do this. Like this would make life worlds easier. And if I don't
Yeah, you're
have,
making all sorts of cool gadgets now too.
oh yeah,
To
I mean that's the thing is that like, so I have this trick that Penguin's going to be coming out with called Gasp, which is my handling of the magnetized cards, and that literally
hmm
came from I was worried my PK ring was going to shatter and I couldn't do this great piece in my show.
Not worried. They always shatter.
And so I ended up with this like new method because I was like in a condo and had the supplies to work on it. I mean, it was like 4 or 5 trips to Michael's and Home Depot, but I figured it out. But I haven't been able to like do that with the rest of the show. And for the last like month, I've been really focused on, okay, when I go to do the awakening, I I have to be able to get the ropes out of the bag, but I want to be able to put the gimmick on my hand and just pick it up straight away. So what do I
Mm.
do to do that? Or I'm doing Chad Long spaghetti al dente. I have the most high-tech box for that because I was tired of the spaghetti falling over, and then I was tired of trying to fish the gimmick
It's
out of it.
absurd.
And so
You
it's like,
should You should. I know they don't know what we're talking about, but yeah,
yeah,
the spaghetti box can't stand up on its own. Think about it, right? It's
yeah,
tall and it's thin. Of course, it just blows over.
yeah.
Maybe you should do some like PK effect with it, right? Like make it with the
Oh,
timer, right? So at the end of it, you can like focus your brain and like knock the spaghetti thing over. Yeah, yeah.
that is such a clever idea, and I have the technology to do it now.
Because it's so sturdy now,
Yeah,
and then
it's
I don't know.
uh but like I
Or
am.
Nick the Duck should do it. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, oof. Yeah. Now, I mean, I got to get back to Nick the Duck now because, like, what can Nick the Duck do? But it's these. So I'm like, as of this recording and taping, I'm headed to Nashville in 2.5, 3 weeks with all like House of Cards with all my new improvements, and I'm like, I can't wait to find out the way the show runs now. Like, what goes through my brain when I'm not fighting with these dumb
Mhm.
things that like I get to the end of a run and I'm like, I need to fix all this stuff. And then I get home, throw my props in the closet and forget about it because all I want to do is like sit with the dogs or play a game or I've got penguin work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, if only you could stay motivated in the in between
Yeah.
show runs,
Yeah.
right? How good would your show be? I have that problem
Oh
as
yeah.
well, where it's like I only care until the few days leading up to it. And I'm like, wow, didn't I think about this a week ago?
Yeah.
It should have been done already.
The
Um,
I do like the idea of audio notes though. I think that I'll try that after my next one.
oh, it's so great. It's
Just
so
because
great.
being able, like, writing things down and getting all those notes out of your head is like, I've always been a typer. I've always been a typey boy, but being able to just sort of like stream of consciousness, that stuff, you must come out with
Well,
things that you would not have thought about otherwise, because it just springs to
it's a
mind.
combination of the two, right? It's a combination of the two, especially if you're like, all right, I'm going to sit down and work on my show. Oh, let me
Mhm.
listen to my last brain dump. Then you listen to it, and now you're instantly in the state of mind you were in immediately
Yes.
after your last show,
Yeah.
right? So now you can be like, all right, yeah, to-do list. I'm gonna,
Hmm.
I gotta 3D print this rope thing and
Yeah.
all that crap, right? So, yeah, it's been helpful for me for now. Maybe 5 years from now, we'll be putting on a VR glasses and like rewatching our show. Like actually, I had that thought the other day. Like,
Yeah.
what happens when you're able to record your show? Like, so the new Apple set, right?
Yeah.
It's got
Yeah.
that thing where you can record in like you can like replay memory type of thing. I know it kind of sucks still, but
Hmm.
imagine if you could film your show in 3D, and then at the end or whenever you want to work on it, you go to the space that you did the show in, throw on your VR goggles, and it's like Mario Kart when you race your ghost, right?
Yes.
Right. So you're on the stage watching yourself perform,
We,
right?
we need that now.
Yeah, it's almost. I guess it's kind of here,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of here already. But yeah, I've been thinking about that. Like, oh wow, like look at me, I'm flashing,
Yeah.
flashing the pill on the right side of the stage.
I
It's totally possible.
I kind of wonder. I really I wish I could self-examine myself and my show, because I don't think I've seen video of my stand-up show nearly as much as I've seen video of me doing close-up, just because of the nature of our jobs.
Yeah,
So like, because
I mean, yeah, you don't film it when you're at P3 and
I
like just,
I film it every time, and then I'll go back and
but you never see it.
I'll watch little snippets here and there. But it's been a while. I mean, maybe I need to do that this week. Is like sit down and like watch two shows back to back.
Well, that's another tool I use a lot, and it's not even about watching yourself, but
Hmm.
a video editor um, software is pretty incredible
Hmm.
when it comes to analyzing your show and improving. Because instead of like, I know everybody says like watch your show. I know
Hmm.
it's painful, but watch it, take notes. Okay, fine, I get it. But if you throw it in a video editor, not only can you see like there's so many things you can see, but
Hmm.
you can see where all the applause is in your show, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell like how long. Oh my God, look, there's 20 minutes between applause there. That's bad, right? So just like dumb data like that is like right there in front of your face.
Yeah.
You don't have to watch the parts you don't want to watch. It's easier to scrub through,
Hmm.
and you can do crazy stuff like I don't know, change the music to your rope routine, or because
Yeah.
you can just throw the music underneath it really easily and mute yourself or bring the volume down so you can get a sense of, yeah, this song's way better. You can kind of like craft like the ending of your show the way you want it. Like you can edit your show
Hmm.
like a video editor and then apply those changes in real life later on. It's been an interesting tool. It's how I
Yeah.
put together the sound and lights for Leviosa.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that I've spent so many years working in like bare bones environments, like in
same.
like
Yeah.
comedy clubs, that I'm not even thinking about that. Like I'm only just now starting to go, man, what could I do with a lighting change here or a shift there? And I need to start watching the shows back in a video editor. Clearly, like I have the technology.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just so much easier.
Hmm.
Like if you're opening it up in VLC and being like, all right, the part I need to see
Yeah.
is like 3519, click,
Yeah.
right? And then you watch it and okay, click again. It's just so much better. You just
Yeah.
clip it out, put it on your phone, listen to it back and over again.
I have
Those are
spent
those techniques.
I have spent years listening to myself, back, because it's very frequently I'll throw an audio recorder on my phone on the stage to listen to the words. But I think that's because of my history as a stand-up, and because I typically am a much more verbal than visual performer. So I'm listening for the audience and myself, and I'm listening for verbal tics in myself that I want to eliminate. That's how I've gotten rid of a lot of ums and ahs and pauses in my show.
Yeah. I mean, these are things that it's such a good tip right there to get rid of all that type of stuff. Yeah. But if you listen to it over and over again as well, it's just gonna, people ask me how you memorize a script, and that's the way.
Yeah.
Just say it in the audio recorder and then listen to it a billion times. That's how you know the lyrics to songs, right? So it's the same thing.
Saying it over and over again is interesting, because I've met so many magicians who say, like, I'm having trouble writing the script, and my advice is always like, just talk through the script, because it's really hard to write in a natural voice. So just like talk it through in your car, or when you're working out or doing something like that.
Yeah.
I know that's where most of my scripts come from. Like, I may have like an idea that I write down, but then when I want to actually get it in my brain, I talk through it over and over again. Then I record it, transcribe it, and go through with a big black marker, and that's where I can take out all of the fat.
Yeah.
And if you lay that text over the top of a waveform from your audio recording, you can see exactly where the ups and downs are. Just like you said with the video, but it's different when you lay the text over the top of it, because you can see the way the text interfaces with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it is something that's timed with music too, like that's a great way to figure it out, because you can like sit there and spit it into your microphone and play the music underneath it, and you can see an exact, you can see where the waveform is, right? So you can be like, okay, no, this is going to be too long or too short. It just saves you time.
Yeah.
I know it's a little bit advanced, but at the same time, like, I don't know, these are the tools that we have. These are incredible tools that haven't been available forever for everybody.
And they're basically free now. I mean, if you have a Mac, like, it comes with pretty powerful editing software. And I think DaVinci Resolve, which is what I use on my PC, is free. So
or just getting yourself filmed is like hilariously easy now. You know how hard that was? Like, I mean, I'm still fairly new to the game, but in 2010, it was like, that was it. I just needed to get footage. That's all I needed. Now it's nothing to set your phone up in the back of the room and you get the best video imaginable.
I know. I can't believe how often we use our phones to not just record ourselves, but also like for work.
Sometimes it's just the tool to use. It's incredible. It's so valuable to have that information about your show.
Well, I think before we wind up this week, and we should just sort of put out there to all the listeners that, like, I think we like these conversations because we like having them. But like, the more you guys want to hear about this about stuff, let us know, because that gives us things to talk about. But before we go, what do you think is one thing that you would like to add to your show this year that you haven't been able to do before?
Well, it's the thing that I'm trying to add is theme. I'm trying to work under a theme and like have a message. I suppose. Now, it's not anything deep, but it's not just a pile of tricks at this point. So I'm trying to add a plausible explanation for the audience and just some things to ponder before the end of the show. So if I can get the script that way without sounding too, I'd like to think about what my own self would think watching my show 10 years from now. Like, look at this idiot. Like, he actually thinks that these people believe that, so if I can shut that guy up, I've done my job correctly. So adding a theme to my show would be the biggest thing for me. What about you?
I think I really want to hit the parlor show with a single deck of cards hard.
Oh yeah,
there's a story I remember reading about Blackstone arriving somewhere, and maybe it was Thurston. I'm pretty sure it was Blackstone, but like, his stuff didn't show up, and so he just went to a drugstore, got a deck of cards, told the audience what was up, and did an entire 90-minute show with an ordinary pack of cards. And I take that as not just a challenge, but also something that is just like truly appealing to me in like limiting the creative process to this thing. And like when you limit yourself in those ways, as you will discover, as Matt Franco and I are about to talk about, it can provide some truly creative moments.
Yeah, that's a superpower if you could do that, you know? Like, oh, yeah, let's go to the drugstore, grab me a deck of cards, and
let's do it.
We'll do it, yeah.
Nick, I'll see you next week. And for now, let's kick it over to myself and Matt Franco. Thanks as always to Nick for joining me on the show. Now, on to the main event. Matt Franco has been on this show before, the first magician to win America's Got Talent, and now the long-running headliner at the Link Hotel and Casino in the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Matt Franco has made an indelible mark on Sin City. I talked to Matt about getting his show back into the swing of things following the pandemic, his creative methods, and a whole lot more. And now you get to join our conversation. Matt Franco, thanks so much for joining me here back on the Penguin Magic Podcast. It's good to see you again, buddy.
Likewise. How's it going?
Doing great. We ran into each other at Magic Live last year and said we need to podcast again, but then both of us got busy. And I wanted to ask you, the first time we talked was right before the pandemic. I mean, your show was really kicking off. And then, of course, everything in Vegas shut down. And then now your show is back and you've had a couple of years under your belt. What was it like coming back from COVID, and how did you change your show, and sort of what did you learn in that?
Well, I think we can all relate to what it was like to be down for as long as we were. So my show was closed, like many shows in Vegas, 412 days, which is a really long break that I never would have taken voluntarily. But I used that time to practice, work on new material. So I revamped the show during that time. And then I did that was kind of like a phase 1 revamp that I did during the break. And then just last February, so it's been 1 year exactly, we did sort of a phase 2 of that revamp where we took a month off last January, a year ago, and unloaded everything from in the theater and reloaded all new technology. So everything you saw last time you came to the show, I have a new show.
Oh, that's fantastic.
A new show. Yeah, I probably apologize. My phone's blown up over here. I've muted it now. But the new show has been running for just 1 year and it all still feels brand new. Lots of new material and the production is 100% new.
How did you... So the last time we talked, and I can't wait to see your new show. Now that I know that there's a new show, I need to get. I mean, it's definitely on my list to go see when I go to Magic Live this year.
Yeah. Don't worry, I still left some of your favorites in there, though.
Good. The last time we talked, I think one of the things that I was really impressed by was your show was very much, you took something that you had been performing and winning awards for on the college market and then added a little more production value. But I mean, I vividly remember going, wow, these people are seeing magic you normally only see at conventions. Like, it was a really solid show. How was the, I mean, and not just solid, but like, I mean, you could tell that you were, as a magician watching another magician, you could tell you were like, it was really fun to watch that kind of magic because just regular people don't see it. Now, you've put together a new show after having spent 5 years in Vegas, 7 years?
So we're in the halfway through our 9th year. It flies by. It's crazy, but we're halfway through our 9th year. We'll celebrate 9 years this coming summer. So,
What, you've been a Vegas headliner for 9 years now. When you're putting together this new show, how does that change the kind of material you're putting in? Because I have to imagine that it's different than when you won America's Got Talent and we're like, oh God, I have to have a Vegas show now.
It's totally different, right? You don't start from zero. You kind of keep the things that are working, which is really hard because 100% was working. I had a hit show. So if it isn't broken, don't fix it. But I always aspire to continue changing. I think we all should continue kind of growing and evolving. So it's really hard for me to take things out, especially because I care about the flow and the structure so much. So it's hard to find the right things to take out when I want to put new things in. But so since you've seen the show, we've put in, we call it a new show because production-wise, it is completely revamped. So when you say especially, since you came, you're like, you took your college show, added a little bit of production value. It's no longer a little bit of production value. It is now officially a ton of production value. In a very tasteful way, in a way that's complementary to the magic, not something that's just like bells and whistles for the sake of bells and whistles, right?
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. I'm so proud of it and so happy with it. But getting back to your question about how do you sort of know what to do, it's not starting from zero anymore. Now it's starting from a place of having several years of experience and knowing how to sort of streamline that process of, taking something from the notebook and putting it into the show and having a process for doing that. So I find that it's easier to do now, just from the idea of having more experience doing it. Experience is always the best teacher. So I think the longer you go, the longer you do this sort of thing. Magic is a cumulative art form. So the more you learn, whether it's on the production side, the logistical side, or the sleight of hand side, or whatever it is, presentations, effects, all of that knowledge sort of accumulates, and you can use it to your advantage.
I hope you didn't take any offense by me saying adding a little bit of production value, because I really didn't mean it that way.
Zero offense. The show is meant to feel minimal in a way. Like, I don't want the audience to walk away talking about the lights. And I think Donny Osmond said no one walks out of the concert singing the lights, right?
Yeah.
And like, that's the idea. You want it to be tasteful. You want it to feel like the show is you. But yeah, no, compared to the show you saw, that was a little bit.
It's like, I have to imagine that being in Vegas and around other shows, I mean, because you've got Cirque down the street, you've got, man, that show Awakening over at the Wynn is a technical masterpiece. I've seen it. I have to imagine being around that stuff. You must get little ideas where you go, ooh, if we could just get a laser or something. It must spark. It must spark different kinds of ideas of creativity.
It can, and over the years, I've seen many, many shows. It's not like I get out all the time to be seeing shows because I'm working nightly. But yeah, it's hard to say where the ideas really come from a production standpoint. But I work with an amazing team on the set design side, on the lighting side, on the creative side of what the show aesthetic is. So just it's kind of about having people that are around that, literally, like how I'm around my show every night. They're around that creative process every single day of their lives in different facets of entertainment. So it's kind of communicating a vision to them and collaborating and kind of bringing it to life that way.
And I imagine, again, like, we sort of keep coming back to this topic of experience. Being there for 9 years now, you must be able to communicate it much more effectively now.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think when I started, I probably didn't know stage left from stage right, or upstage from downstage, and all of the sort of theatrical lingo that you don't learn if you don't go to theater school, which I didn't. So it was all school of hard knocks for me when I was playing colleges, right? And all the things leading up to that. But when you're playing libraries and those things, you don't need to know, what the rail is and what different types of lights are and what they do and all of that. So that's something that, like, I can't just be around it and not ask questions. I like to really kind of learn things along the way. So over the past decade or so, I've learned a lot of things that I didn't know at that time.
You're performing nightly. Are you able to get out on the road at all and go back and do some colleges or theaters or other types of venues that are not like where you can write a check?
I just did one yesterday. I headlined the opening ceremonies for the International Builders Show. And that actually happened to be here in Vegas. In the morning, so I could wake up, do that, and then do my show at night. So I still get out and do different things that I'm interested in doing. I haven't done a proper tour since pre-COVID, but I'll get back out there at some point. I also had a baby a year ago, so it's having the Vegas residency is, aside from being a dream come true, is also works really well for starting a family. So.
Oh, congratulations! That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
When you're going out and doing a place other than your own theater, because I am starting to have this problem where the Penguin Magic Theater is becoming this like beast that cannot be fed of fun, because we've added our own lighting and sound, and there's new things that we're adding production value to. And so I find myself in there at night going, oh, I could do this. And so now the show that I have in there is like, seeing me in the P3 theater is different than seeing me at, like, say, the Magic Castle. How is that experience for you, where you're like, when you're not in your theater?
It's different.
Yeah.
It's different, but I tend to choose my venues so that people are seeing the show in the best light, venues that can accommodate the production value that we bring with us. So yeah, that's what I kind of try to do. I want to give people a good experience no matter where I'm performing, but you're never going to have more bells and whistles than you have in a theater that's named after you, so, I can't kid, it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that makes that experience special too, and makes it worth it for, someone who lives in New Jersey and came to see your show there when you came to their town. But it also makes it worth it for them to make that trip to Vegas to see the Vegas version of the show.
Yeah. There's nothing like seeing a show in Vegas with the like maximum production value possible.
Yeah. Wait till you see it.
Oh man, I can't wait. Now you mentioned the team, so you're talking about collaborating with the production team, which is fantastic. You mentioned on the Magic side, who are you collaborating with on the Magic side these days?
I honestly have always worked for the most part, in like a little Matt Franco vacuum, to be honest with you. I will call friends that specialize in certain things when I need help with something specific. But it's really weird. Like I tend to be solo on like the Magic side of creating. I do it in a really like independent way. And then eventually I'll try to share it with a few friends, especially if it's something I'm creating for television and I'm not going to have a chance to get a bunch of reps in front of an audience. I'll share it with a few people, but for the most part, it's like a little vacuum. And I don't know that that's a good or bad thing, but it is what it is. Yeah, that's good. For the most part, that's kind of what my process has become,
And where does Eric Diddleman come in the process? Because I know.
I call him in New York and I say, hey, I had this idea. What do you think of this? And, he tells me what he likes and doesn't like about it.
Are you two still doing your podcast?
Well, we haven't done that since I had the baby.
Oh, no. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then, how is being a new father affecting your show? I mean,
it has zero effect on the show, but it's an amazing effect on my life.
Yeah.
And he gets to come to the show occasionally. He walks now and says "Dad," and he knows it's me up there, so it's super fun. I mean, I guess it affects the show in that I'll occasionally hear him like yelling and trying to say hi to me from the side of the stage. But what an amazing gift! It's great.
Yeah, that's. I'm really excited to see the kind of material you start doing in the future as your son, I'm assuming, since you said he, as your son,
that's right.
As your son grows up, I'm interested to see what happens there. And it'll also be sort of fascinating to watch you as a performer navigate fatherhood, because I've known some friends who have children that are children that don't understand that not everyone's parents are magicians. So I'm sure it'll be fascinating as your son gets older.
Yeah, it'll be strange, I'm sure, like it's just like him once he starts to understand, like sitting in the car and seeing a bus go by with my face on it. I think that's going to be strange. At first, he's not going to know that that's not normal, right? So yeah, it'll be interesting.
I'm sure there's a day in Vegas that every Vegas parent has to sit down and say, now your friends' parents are not on the side of a bus for X, Y, and Z reason.
They might be.
Now, where are you finding time to work on new material and create new material for this? For your show?
Well, whenever I can, right? So I don't necessarily, I sit with a notebook and I write down ideas, and a lot of times I create without a specific platform in mind. So it might not be. I sometimes I'll work on something and I don't know if it's for my show or not. And I started doing this more and more during the pandemic when I, had no specific platforms, right? So I would I guess the internet became more of a platform for everybody at that time. But I was just creating based on things I was interested in, right? I was reading about things I was just interested in, whether or not I knew I had a place to perform it. I was just kind of diving headfirst into things that I wanted to dive into. It reminded me of being a kid, like when you're just practicing magic strictly for fun, and there was no profession to it per se. And I've kind of continued with that a little bit. So sometimes I'm creating and I don't know if it's, something I want to release for TV or put directly into the show first or what, or just maybe it's a social media video. I don't know. So the question, I guess, is when do you find time? And it's whenever I can, right? So if I get home from the show and everybody's asleep and I need to stay up till 3 a.m. working on something, I do. If I'm up early, I wake up at, very early in the morning, and I've done a lot before seeing you at 10 a.m. I've had a whole school day's worth of time to be like working on things, doing things. So yeah, I find it whenever I can. I've never been much of a sleeper, so I awake often, and I find the time to work on whatever it is I need to work on.
The idea of creating without focus for a platform is fascinating to me.
Okay.
I just say that because knowing you have this successful stage show, knowing you have to do stuff for TV, and knowing that you probably have to have a pretty regular social media schedule, just because that's a large portion of the way many people are selling tickets and making people aware of shows. And just focusing on creating magic as the creative act and then figuring out what it does later must be in some ways very freeing.
Super freeing. Yeah. And like, especially during the pandemic, I was just accepting the fact that this might never become something. This might just sit in the notebook and maybe never make it off the page. I don't know that it's the most efficient. I mean, the most efficient is to, lock yourself in a room, say, okay, I have this X coming up, whatever it is, and I'm going to create something that I need to do for that because I need to. I mean, that would be an efficient way of doing it, or pulling from something that will fit that venue, whatever it is. So yeah, I don't know that it's the most efficient, and I've done it both ways, right? Sometimes I've sat down and thought like, oh, I'm going on this specific thing. What am I going to do for that? Like, for example, last month I did the show called The Talk, right? And I sat down, I watched an episode, and then like I was like, oh, okay, I see what the space looks like, and I sort of created something specific. You can find this on YouTube. I created something specifically for that venue, and like I recommend people listening to this, magicians, watch it. Like, you could see all of the sort of Spanish school magic that I was diving into during the pandemic got reinterpreted and blended into this routine that I created for The Talk. And knowing that The Talk, people talk, like I sort of integrated the interview portion into the magic portion. So like I knew they were going to be asking questions up front at the top of this segment. And then I wanted some of the things and pictures that came up during that chat to bleed their way into the magic as a surprise ending, right? So like I found a way to sort of combine those things. So like in this case, I was creating specifically for the venue that I was going to. So, but I was using magic and techniques that I was learning at a time when I don't know exactly what I'm going to use these for. Yeah. Right. Also, when you came to the show, sorry, I'm bouncing around.
No,
when
please.
You came to the show, it was pre-pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the other cool thing. So one of the segments I've since added to the show, because it's a full production show, you can't just, like on the fly, I can't just on the fly be like, all right, you know what, I'm going to skip this and throw this in, right? Because there's a whole team of people involved in making the show work, right?
Yeah.
So it's impossible to just fly by the seat of your pants in the way that you could performing at a solo show, right? A one-man show. So I built into the show a segment, we call it casino because it takes place at a casino table, a blackjack table. And it's like a 10-minute segment where I can do whatever I'm working on in terms of close-up.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So like it's, we have a handheld camera. I bring 4 people up, 2 on each side to sit at the blackjack table with me. I'm in the dealer's position. And whatever it is that I'm working on at the time, I can throw into that 10-minute block. If I'm working on something for fun for me at home, sleight of hand wise, moves, whatever. Maybe it's a bottom palm instead of a side steal. Whatever it is, it could be a small thing like that, or it could be a whole routine I can throw in there, which is a really nice way to keep that flowing and creative. So I don't know if this information is helpful to anybody, but hopefully it is.
I think that's an incredible idea and a very tasteful way to take something that could be iffy, but not have to throw a giant wrench in the show to get it in there. I mean, that's really cool.
I created that. Yeah, I created that out of necessity because the show is much more flexible now. So I rebuilt, like I said, the entire thing, not just the way it looks from the audience, but also the way that it operates.
Yeah.
So while it looks 10,000 times more amazing from in the audience now, the way it actually logistically runs backstage is so much simpler than before, which is a great thing. So, but anyway, when it was particularly complicated in the past, I built this little 10-minute block out of necessity because I wanted to be able to stretch. I wanted to be able to do things different if I wanted to. I wanted to be able to try things that I was working on. So that's why I created that sort of safe space to do it.
It's just such a it's just such a clever, fascinating idea, and also must gives your show a little bit of that element of the show you saw last night's not the same show as this show you're seeing tonight. So as you having repeat people, they can
it's super. Yeah, it's super true. So I did this segment yesterday morning when I did the opening ceremony for the International Builders Show. And then I knew a lot of those people were at my show the night before. And I know that a lot of them will be at my show later that night, literally. So they would see me at the opening ceremony in the morning, a few thousand people. And I knew some of those people would either already have tickets for later in the week or see the opening ceremony and go, wow, we should see the whole show, right? So some people saw that segment in the morning and then again, 10 hours later, and it would have been different.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been exactly the same, which is amazing. That's great,
Yeah.
In the same day.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So actually, and I want to get back to something you said about, it may not be the most efficient way to create as far as this, creation without idea of platform or what it's going to be done. But it must, though, it must give you the ability to, or it must result in some truly unique pieces that you would not have been able to get to any other way. Because if I'm creating for close-up and I'm having an idea and I'm like, oh, well, this isn't really going to work in close-up, but I'm more focused on the effect, then I could get to a point where I'm like, man, this is an amazing trick, but I would have abandoned it earlier in the process because it didn't fit where I wanted it to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think you just kind of knocked something loose in my head. I think the whole creation or study without a platform in mind adds to your toolbox ultimately. Yeah. So that like later on, and I think I just gave an example of it, like later on when I mentioned the talk, later on when you are creating for a platform, you have more to draw from.
Yes.
I think that's what it does is it expands your toolbox in ways that you don't even know will benefit you down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so. I'm like, because it's just knocking things loose in my head now where I'm like, because I'm thinking about how as I became more of a stage magician and having a parlor show, I'm looking back at my formal close-up set and going like, I learned the benefit of having music and lighting changes. And when I added that to a formal close-up set, just everything got better and tighter and more interesting to look at. And so it's just this, I think we're basically going back and forth saying, if you just continue to become more and more experienced, your show will get better.
I think it's inevitable, right?
Yeah,
I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, where do you see your show going now? Because you've added this production value, so this is a new tool in your toolbox. You've learned how to put things in to fulfill you creatively and allow you to stretch and experiment without being a detriment to the show. What is phase 3 for you?
That's a good question. I'm always sort of creating things, whether it be for the show or not, but like a couple of the things I've worked on recently, I think I want to find a way to put them into the show. But again, the hard part is knowing what to take out. But yeah, that's what it is. It's continuing to be able to create and share magic with people through various platforms. I think that's what it's all about. It's like spreading this joy, spreading this fun, and being able to hopefully create good magic, not just like for the sake of for that one audience, but also like I think when people see good magic, it makes magic as a whole better, right? So like I love seeing good magic, and I love seeing great magicians out there, new magicians out there that are kind of doing good things for magic. That's wonderful because magic is still like sort of a niche thing.
Yeah. Now I'm going to get selfish in my questions, but how do you decide to take something out? What is your criteria? Because that's something I'm having a real struggle with at the moment, figuring out what to take out.
It's super hard. And like, I honestly sometimes wait till it gets forced as a necessity. So for example, I mentioned 4 new things like new chunks.
Yeah.
Like when I say new things, I mean 10-minute segment or 5-minute segment or something. I mean like a good substantial chunk.
Yeah.
I don't mean like a new card trick, I mean like a new thing. A new scene, if you will, in the show. So when the 4 new scenes went in, that was a little bit out of necessity too, because there was a time when we were coming back from the pandemic when I didn't know that I would even be able to have people come on stage. So some of the new segments you'll notice don't require participation on stage. They might involve the audience from a distance, but not actually them physically coming on stage. Mm-hmm. So like at least 2 of those things were born from that, and removing things and where people were on stage and replacing them with things where they didn't have to come on stage. Mm-hmm. See what I mean? So like I was actually pulling things out based on the intimacy of those routines.
Yeah.
And that, that's fine, because, the new flow makes sense and it works, and it's all good. You make up for that lost intimacy when you bring people four people up to sit with you at a casino table. You gain it back in other places, right? So
you know what I think though, in I'm sure that people will vehemently argue against me here, but I think one of the best things that came out of the pandemic was parlor and stage magicians developing more in-one pieces, or pieces that required participation but not bringing people up on stage. Because I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a show and it's bring somebody up, do a trick, send them back, bring somebody else up, do a trick, send them back. And the ability to interact with the crowd from the stage so that they feel like they're a part of the magic but not interrupting your flow is, I think we just got so much better at that. And I'm seeing so many cool approaches to that these days.
Yeah, no, so many great routines were born out of that, that sort of constraint, and I think constraints are good. Like there's something freeing about sitting down and just studying or working on things without constraints, but also when you're creating for a specific platform, like it gives you constraints. When you're creating something that, I can't pull someone on stage, that creates a constraint, and it's like a creative challenge to work within. All these things are, the fun part of our what we do. This is great.
Yeah,
I love that.
It's fantastic. Well, Matt, I know you have got a busy day ahead of you, as you've already had a busy day already. So thanks so much for taking some time to talk to me, and we'll have to have you back on again, because you are. I continue to love and respect and admire all of the magic that you're doing, and it's just really cool to see somebody out there like doing awesome stuff like you are.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. The admiration is mutual. When you come out to Vegas, let's do it in person.
Oh, I'm into it. All right. Yeah. Thanks so much.
No problem. Take care.
That's going to do it for this week, kids. Thanks so much to Matt Franco for the conversation, and thanks to you for listening. Hey, kids, local show alert. I'll be in Nashville at the House of Cards, March 24th through the 31st. I hope to see a bunch of Penguin fans there at one of my favorite venues to play. Also, we have a ton of shows coming up at the P3 Magic Theater. The kids at Penguin Magic have been brewing up some special things for you. I can't wait for you to hear the announcements we have in store. You like the new format? Reach out to me on Instagram to suggest topics you want me and Nick to talk about. We love getting requests from you. Well, as always, we're a weekly podcast, so be sure to like and subscribe, as well as share your favorite episodes on the social media platform you're currently looking for a condo on. If you wanted to reach out to me about anything on this week's show, you're going to have to hurl a message in a bottle at me, because I'm steering the ship through troubled waters. Don't worry, I'm the captain of a pretty steady ship. But if cryptical nautical metaphors aren't your cup of tea, you can always hit me up on Instagram at Erik Tait. That's at ERIKTAIT. From me and everyone else here at the P3 Magic Studios, practice, perform.